The iRacing go-kart is one of the deepest rabbit holes that you can go into when it comes to sim racing content. I know I've talked about this briefly in a video before, but I have enough information now to where I want to dedicate an entire video to everyone's favorite unmade iRacing vehicle, the go-kart. The go-kart is probably the most universally raced vehicle in existence. From F1 champions to your little cousin, everybody has driven a go-kart at some point or another. So when you think about vehicles that could easily be scanned and licensed into iRacing, the go-kart should be one of the top of the list. So where's the go-kart? To get a full answer on this, we're going to have to start at the very beginning, back when iRacing launched in 2008. Using the Wayback Machine, we can take a look at what the iRacing website looked like all the way back in 2008. Yes, some of the media might be dead, some of the links might lead to nowhere, but the interesting thing to look at is if we go into the track section. In this section, iRacing lists all of the tracks that they intend to scan and put into the game. Only about 10 of these tracks were in at this point, but there is a full list of road tracks, oval tracks, and all the way at the bottom, karting tracks. That's right, even though there was zero indication of the go-kart being a vehicle in their cars section, they left an entire section of tracks to karting. So let's quickly go over all of these tracks that were left out of iRacing due to not having go-karts in them. But first, this video was sponsored by Racerware.store. I'm super thankful that the guys over at Racerware came on board to show off their amazing looking products. If you like the look of retro looking NASCAR merchandise, but you think that some of it gets a little bit too gaudy, this is the perfect t-shirts, tank tops, hats for you. My favorite shirt is the America's True Pastime shirt because you just have all the different types of cars on there and the same cool American retro looking graphic. But make sure to use code DJ Yee-J at checkout for 5% off your order. The first couple I covered in a previous video, which is Miller Motorsports Park aka Utah Motorsports Campus and Moroso Motorsports Park aka Palm Beach International Raceway. If you want to see more information on those, click the video right here. You could also lump Willow Springs into this because now iRacing has Willow Springs, but this Willow Springs kart track was scanned off of their initial scanning back in 2007-2008 era that actually never ended up making it into iRacing. Next are two go-kart tracks that were scanned alongside the main tracks that were on the same campus, but were never added because of no go-karts to drive them on. And those two tracks would be the Briggs and Stratton Motorplex at Road America and the Plantation Valley Kart Track at Virginia International Raceway. Both Road America and Virginia International Raceway would eventually get released onto iRacing, but even though the go-kart tracks were scanned along with them, there was nothing to be seen on that end. And the final two go-kart tracks are completely standalone go-kart tracks that have never been seen in any sort of form in iRacing, and that would be the F1 Outdoors track and Moran Raceway. If you're wondering what F1 Outdoors is, I was too, and when I looked it up, it turns out it is now a closed go-kart track in the Boston area, and that makes sense because iRacing is located in the Boston area, so that's just their local go-kart track. Still, it's a pretty curious choice of a track in the first place. In terms of the actual track though, it's a pretty standard recreational outdoor go-kart track that unfortunately closed back in 2017. Though judging by their Yelp reviews, I don't think that many people were unhappy about it. Moran Raceway was another dedicated go-kart track all the way on the other side of the country in Beaumont, California. This track was actually extremely popular with both recreational and competitive divisions alike, and all of the Southern California region it was well known with the racing community. But unfortunately, this track closed down too back in 2008 when the land was purchased. On the bright side though, Rocky Moran of Moran Raceway is designing another circuit in Southern California which is being built right now with K1 speed called the K1 circuit. But overall, the extensive scans for go-kart tracks and iRacing early on leads heavily to the idea that iRacing was working on the go-kart since the very beginning. But something was obviously not completely right with it, as they weren't even willing to say that they were going to add the go-kart into iRacing in the first place. It just doesn't make much sense to me. Why would iRacing announce almost 10 different go-kart tracks without announcing the go-kart? That's like announcing every single NFL team to be in your upcoming game without committing it to be a football game. Well, the iRacing community wouldn't even begin to have answers for almost a full decade. But in that radio silence of almost 10 full years, there was one shred of information given to the iRacing community. Kevin Bobbitt in the iRacing forums revealed in a forum post, saying, "Look at one of the projects the art and production guys have going on. Can you tell what it is? And before you ask, there is no ETA available, still very early in the project. The image that he shares is obviously the wheel of a go-kart." But this leads to another very peculiar question. How are they very early in the go-kart production process, almost 7 years after we thought that they started in production? Well, to be honest, iRacing probably didn't want anybody to ever have those answers. No talk of the go-kart at all, very minimal chatter from even the community about go-karts. Maybe a single forum post here or there with minimal engagement, but especially nothing coming from iRacing's side. But in 2017, one disgruntled iRacing alpha tester leaked everything. Along with his leaks of upcoming content of stuff that would actually end up getting released, one video that he posted onto YouTube was a very peculiar one that nobody ever thought that they would see on iRacing, and that was a go-kart driving around a track. This video was only up for a few hours before it was forced to be taken down, as alpha testers sign non-disclosure agreements for anything that they test within iRacing's alpha testing system. While unfortunately I have not been able to get my hands on a copy of this video, I do have a single screenshot from this video along with a few other screenshots taken from other anonymous sources. When I created a community post about this image, Ryan here stated that he remembered the video, and while he didn't remember much about the kart itself, he remembers the track being some sort of bodged oval interior with cones for corners, and that seems to line up with the image that we see here. It was some sort of weird pit road that's made out of the infield of some sort of oval, looks like a short track, and they just drive around on the interior. Another person in the comments was able to identify the engine from this picture alone as a DD2 Rotax engine. What I have learned from anonymous sources though is that this kart is actually the 2004 Rotax RM1. This kart was used for the 2004 Rotax Max Challenge World Finals Series and could reach speeds of up to 100 miles an hour on the straights. Its engine was a Rotax 125cc, 34 horsepower, 2-stroke water-cooled single engine. The initial reaction from some people was that this seemed like kind of an unconventional kart to be the one scanned to go into iRacing. But I think I cracked the code on why this was the kart that was initially chosen. This article from Popular Mechanics in 2004 talks about the RM1 in length, about all of the engineering and different things that this kart can do that was very state-of-the-art at the time. But if you look closely into the article, what do they talk about? A track called F1 Outdoors in East Bridgewater, Massachusetts. So that's why a seemingly random go-kart track and a seemingly random go-kart were set to go into iRacing, because they were a package deal and local to iRacing. So now we know about the go-kart itself, we know about why it was planned to be in iRacing, but one big question is left unanswered. Why isn't it in iRacing? The answer to this is actually surprisingly simple. An anonymous source who got to drive the go-kart back when it was in alpha cleared up this question in 3 simple words: drove like junk. He confirmed that the graphics on the kart were from the original 2007 build, all but confirming that this kart was in development since the very beginning, because he could tell that the gauge cluster and how the model looked was just not up to the standards of even 2017 iRacing. And while he said it had decent sounds associated with it, at the end of the day, it was at best 70% drivable. Along with that, in a deleted forum post, Tony Gardner confirms this when he wrote, "We experimented with a kart on alpha but determined it does not fit well with a couple of our current models/systems, so karting would require more research and development work in several areas." And that coincides with what a lot of people say when they talk about sim racing go-karts. Traction.gg has a good article comparing all of the dedicated go-kart sim racing experiences and how even these, which are designed to be just pure go-kart simulators, all struggle at certain points to not mimic real life. But it seems like for iRacing specifically, they couldn't reconcile their physics engine with a very light vehicle with no suspension. But also keep in mind that this 2017 era was still on the V6 tire model, so maybe on the V7 tire model they would have tested things and things could have gone better. Unfortunately, from what I have seen and heard, the iRacing go-kart is no longer available in alpha testing as of just after that 2017 era, meaning that the V7 tire model was never tried on the go-kart in the first place. So at the end of the day, what was the iRacing go-kart even? Well, it seems like it was a project that was started right when the development of iRacing started, lasted for 10 plus years until ultimately they decided that too much time had passed, the idea was just a little bit too old, and it was finally dead. So if go-karting was ever to come to iRacing, it would have to be just like what they did with Willow Springs and build it up once again from the ground up. But it seems that iRacing doesn't seem too eager to do this, as there has never been another mention of go-karts since that leak in 2017. So let me know in the comments below, should iRacing try to scan a go-kart again, and if so, which one? And which go-kart tracks would you like to see scanned and put into iRacing if they did do that? Alright, thank you guys for watching, hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you all on the track.